You were trying to resolve the issue
Okay.
for the residents, including the people who own the property and your property owners that I guess you're representing.
All right,
So please.
one final thing. Mr. Mallow's letter, each of you, I think, had received it,
Right.
except Mr. Shiva. Yeah, all right. I don't know if you board members had read it yet, but one of his concerns in it was the ISR calculation being incorrect. And so let me ask the architect or developer, who prepared the ISR calculation in the application?
Our company did.
And according to Mr. Mallow, you netted out pervious surfaces that under the ISR calculation in our zoning code aren't supposed to be netted out, in which case the actual ISR is 0.54 rather than 0.42.
Well, that's not true.
No, you didn't net it out, or no, our
No.
code doesn't say that?
I'm telling you, is the impervious surface ratio that we did is exactly right.
Okay, on your calculation, there is a subtraction.
Sure.
Lost where I put it here. What is it that is being subtracted out? There are approximately 15,000 square feet.
Because there's pervious surface pavers that we're using on the parking lot, which allows us to take that away.
And what in the zoning code allows that to be taken away?
Because it's considered a pervious surface.
But it's also hard surface,
No,
isn't
it's
it?
pervious surface.
It's pervious surface,
It's
hard
pervious
surface.
surface, exactly right.
It is pervious surface, hard surface.
It doesn't matter.
Maybe out of clay.
It's pervious surface. It's impervious surface and pervious surface. That's the only criteria.
Let me ask Mr. Holbert, is that correct?
That is correct.
So Mr. Mallow is incorrect.
There's actually products out there that allow.
Get up closer to the microphone, please.
There's actually products out there that allow you to use numbers where it's not a solid, hard surface. It actually goes through the product itself and then goes into some type of underwater retention type system. So it is something that Hampton County, City of Cincinnati, Sycamore Township, all permit. It is a standard practice, and when you start looking at, our new code, we want to spell that out, we want to try to get more developers to use that type of product, because it is a great product, and it doesn't create all the watershed that a standard asphalt or concrete surface does, so it actually helps us.
That's nice that it will be in the new code, and it may well help us, but in the current code, is it spelled out to net that out? My understanding of the tables of the current code is it says you take the hard surfaces and you treat them as impervious in calculating the ratio. Is that incorrect?
The standard for that product, since it does allow the water to go through it, it would be used for part of those calculations.
But does our code say that, Mr. Holbert?
My interpretation is yes.
So the code does not explicitly say that, you interpret it that way.
My interpretation of the code is you can use that on your development to help take that water to another point versus shedding it to another area. It's a way to address the water.
All right, thank you. I'll let others address that then. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I comment in regards to Mr. Jones's comment? regarding- So,
James.
James. So, anyway, you can ask anybody about this. I have no friends, right? I look at everybody the same. No matter what comes in front of me, I don't look at it any differently because somebody knows the trustees. I don't look at it any differently because somebody's running for trustee. I look at everything based on the merits of the case, period.
You don't report to Mr. Kubicki, do you?
I don't. You know what? He's a township trustee. Have I seen him in meetings? Sure. Have we had conversations? Well, sure. But you and I have also had conversations, right?
Yes, and I
So,
like you, Harry.
Am I going to change my opinion because we had a conversation? I'm not. That's not my job. My job is to take the zoning resolution, review what's put in front of me, make a determination on if it meets. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. It's black and white. Now, my interpretation may differ from yours. I don't know. You're an attorney. I'm a planning and zoning administrator. There's two different educations there. We go different ways, right? So it's not to say that you're wrong and I'm right or vice versa. I look at what's put in front of me, I make an honest attempt at reviewing that based on the code that's put in front of me, because that's what the trustees entrust me to do, period. So I do take great offense to the fact that you would say that in a public meeting and try to ruin my credibility. Look at my cases that's been put in front of you, it doesn't matter who it is. I go down to code, chapter 3 through 15, I analyze everything. That's exactly what this applicant did based on my advice. I said, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna look at chapter 3 through 15. I'm gonna analyze your project. It either meets or it doesn't. Then I'm gonna look at chapter 17, and it either meets or it doesn't meet. Look at the staff report. There's no bias, it's fact. This is what the code says. This is what the applicant put in front of me. This is my review of it. That's why that board's there. They're the ones who are gonna make the decision whether to approve or deny this based on the applicant's submittal, period. My job is staff. I'm not making any decisions here.
Sometimes we agree with you and sometimes we don't.
Well, that goes without saying.
Well, if it helps,
That's
I don't like
definitely
it.
true.
Let me note, I was not suggesting that Mr. Holber is dishonest in any way, but when we look at things that we view as favorable, sometimes we all view them differently, and that was the point of my question. I am not suggesting you were dishonest in any way.
I
I
really
think you're a
appreciate
nice
that.
guy working hard to do your job, so please understand that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So let's get to the next, you're going to speak for others as well?
Yes, that's.
Very good.
Is the microphone working?
I don't know, give it a yell, let's see if everybody hears it.
Okay. My name is Jack Flume. I'm a township resident at 7541 Hosbrook Road. And I'm going to try to be brief. Sometimes it's difficult. I want to start though with the ISR. I wasn't going to do that originally, but since Mr. James finished up with that and there was some discussion about it, you all have a copy of Peter Mallow's letter. I think that you did. Item 1, in his letter on page 2, dealt again with the calculation of the impervious surface ratio. And I understand pavers and all of that sort of thing. But his item B, and I'm gonna read from that, if that's okay. By definition, a parking lot, whether there's pervious or not, is a hard surface suitable for the weight of a vehicle. The zoning resolution, referring to Sycamore Township zoning resolution, does not make any specific allowances for pervious or porous pavement. However, the Hamilton County Rural Zoning Commission specifically states that for the calculation of ISR, pervious pavement or pavers, gravel, or other similarly paved areas shall be counted as 100% impervious. So in other words, if it's a gravel parking lot, or if it's a paver that allows grass to grow up in between some of these systems out there, and I think most of us have seen them or parked our cars on them one time or another, that those parking fields are not pervious or can be to be considered impervious. Furthermore, and again I'm quoting from Peter's letter, the Hamilton County stormwater regulations, which I think is pretty critical, consider pervious or porous pavement to be a hard surface. That's pretty clear. Peter Mallow, I don't know how many of you know him, but he's a very experienced person. It's too bad he couldn't be here to present his own thoughts. But that's pretty critical. He goes on then, when ISR is calculated correctly, the applicant is requesting a 31% increase above the maximum allowed by the zoning resolution. So earlier, Harry talked about the
I
tipping.
would say, first of all, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but as far as the letter, it's already part of the record with respect to you're providing testimony, your own personal testimony as opposed to testimony. So if you
No,
can provide.
I'm not. I'm using somebody else's letter, which is a record, as a point to emphasize my understanding of the process.
I'll object on the grounds of hearsay. It's a quasi judicial proceedings on which they're trying to introduce evidence from someone who's not here and able to be cross-examined.
I
So
don't
I would
think
ask that Mr. Mallory's letter be stricken from the record.
That's Mr. Tuffy making the objection.
I think we can note his objection for the record, and then proceed on.
I don't understand. You gotta explain something to me here. Where are we? Tom, are you saying that I
You're-
cannot quote from?
Sir,
I preserve my objection and let's just.
So
move
you're
on.
free to go, he overruled the objection, so you're free to go ahead. He's got an objection on the record, if it goes up on appeal, somebody else can deal with it. For now, you can go ahead.
Okay, so I'm okay.
For now.
All right.
Please stick to your personal testimony.
This is my personal testimony, but there's some other issues and there's other testimonies that rely on certain documents or certain elements of the application as well. So, okay, I'll go on. We're getting bogged down in some legal things here. But I consider this to be pretty critical. If in fact, the calculations made by the applicant are incorrect, and do not meet the stormwater regulations, then we should be dealing, as Harry said earlier, with a rezoning process rather than being here before the BZA. Is that correct, Harry?
What is your specific question?
My question is, if the calculations are incorrect, and the actual, by the alternate method of calculating, I'll say that, exceeds 0.45. My understanding was you earlier made a comment that we should be dealing with a zoning issue, not a BZA.
No, what I said was based on the .45 threshold, the applicant has met the requirements to be considered under the BZA conditional use application. If they exceed that number, there's a different process based on low intensity, medium, and high intensity, which would either dictate zoning commission, period, or zoning commission and board of trustees, based on the ISR.
Okay, so they would go before a different body then, which would be the zoning commission, not the BZA, if they exceed 0.45.
It would still be a request for conditional use in a residential area, correct?
Well, based on the code, once it gets over that .45 threshold, it goes PUD 1. So it would
Yeah,
go zoning commission.
That's my curbside opinion here as well. So we're in the wrong body, we're before the wrong group, if in fact the impervious surface
So here's
calculation
what it says.
exceeds 0.45.
If you would allow me. Okay?
Of course.
So under churches, low intensity, maximum ISR .45 in AA through C, and also D zoning, those are conditional use. Moderate intensity, maximum ISR .6, PUD 1, AA through C, and also D. Under high intensity, maximum ISR over .65, AA through C, and also D, PUD 2. So
Okay.
I don't know if that answers your question, but I tried.
Well, not really. I think my question or my statement is that the calculation of the ISR is absolutely critical to determine where we are in the administrative and the review process of the application. And I think there's at least some credible evidence, I'll use, that the calculation should be checked and verified.
Can I address the board for a second? I mean, can we defer this, that we'll either suffice to whoever, because I'm sure you guys are not equipped to make the engineering judgment that we're arguing and getting the minutia about, that we will either subject this to whoever's interpretation it is, and if we don't meet it, we either have to shrink the size of the building to meet those requirements. That's all I'm getting. We can go back and forth, but I mean, I've sat on boards with like you guys have, and I don't know who the arbiter of this is, but it's gonna be.
Right now, it's here.
And I agree, but that we subject this to however it gets down to, but to sit there and argue whether this meets the criteria or not tonight, we will meet the criteria, whether we have to shrink the building, shrink the parking, or the surfaces that Randy's talked about actually meet the criteria. Can we debate that later and at least go with the idea that it's not either meet it or we'll shrink the building, we'll meet those criteria? Similar to a landscape or lighting plan.
Can I say something about what they're talking about? If we use pervious pavement all the time to reduce water management, common practice. I don't know why they're arguing about it. I'm very confused.
aesthetics.
We will meet the criteria, there's no way we're gonna sit there and fight back and forth with how that's gonna match or what engineer is gonna determine, that's my point.
So I suggest we move on. I think you understand the issue, you think it
Yeah,
doesn't.
let's
Terry
move on.
thinks it does, and you think it doesn't.
I think that certainly needs to be verified.
Yeah, so I think we've got the point, right? So,
It's okay with me.
yeah, okay.
I'd like to get home before midnight tonight as well. Another point then, as some of you may know, and as several people probably following me as well as before me have talked about the land use plan. Some of you may know that I was one of the principal authors of the land use plan, as well as very involved in zoning matters in the late 1990s and early 2000s, when the township adopted their own zoning resolutions and created what was then known as the 2002 land use plan. Tom James, before me, showed a slide of part of that 2002 land use plan. So I have a history and I think a fairly good understanding and knowledge about the interrelationships of land use planning, zoning, development, commercial development, residential development, whatever, in Sycamore Township. I would like to suggest that one of the reasons you lately, and the trustees are experiencing this, the planning commission is experiencing this, and now the BZA is experiencing this, a great surge of interest and participation from the residents of the township. Because they see, and I believe that we are, in fact, at a fork in the road. And that we can take the right fork or the left fork, but we're gonna be taking a fork. I think Yogi Berra said, if it's a fork in the road, take it. Well, we're gonna take it, and I think what we wanna be sure is that we take it the correct fork, the one that benefits the residents in our community as well as the overall township. And the decision that you're here to make tonight is part of that process. So that it's more than just the technical requirements. It's more than just whether the applicant complies with parking spaces and ISR and landscaping, all the rest of that sort of thing. And the churches are permitted in single-family residential, there's no question about that. But it's the spirit that we adopted the land use plan back in 2002, and again updated in 2008, and nothing changed in this area here. It was still designated in yellow, which is single-family detached housing of the type that Mr. James showed that had been there until it's been demolished. So preserving that character and preserving that nature of our community and of our neighborhood is absolutely critical for the future of Sycamore Township. We really need to be able to stick with the spirit of the land use plan, and that land use plan is going to be updated soon, sometime in the next 2 years or so, and it will be launched from where we have today in terms of the 2002 and 2008 land use plan. So the issues are bigger than just the details of the applicant here. The issues include the larger picture that affects the entire township and will continue to affect the township. Now, to get back to a couple of technical things, and I know David Kubicki will smile. I hope he smiles when he hears me say something about traffic, because he knows that's one of my favorite subjects. The land use plan, or the site plan that's shown there, is probably deficient and violates site distances. Now, I know that the answer to that question is, well, the township relies upon the county engineer, Mr. Hubbard. He will review this and tell the township and tell the applicant what's good and what's bad about this in terms of accessibility and access management.
Do you have any particular experience that qualifies you to give such an opinion?
I do.
What is that?
I'm a civil engineer. I'm a traffic engineer. I'm a land use planner, and I have prepared probably 200 or 300 traffic impact studies for various developers in Hamilton County, throughout Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana. It's part of my business, in my consulting practice, and I'm very concerned about traffic flow, traffic safety, and one of the important criteria in all site development is to make sure that it's safe to have ingress and egress facilities on a roadway. In this particular instance, that driveway, I believe, I have to put it in that term, but based on my knowledge and experience in the field, I believe that that driveway violates safe site distance. It would be a hazard, not only to the vehicles entering and leaving, but also to the vehicles on Cougar Mill. The county engineer makes a final determination about that, but I believe that would be, I believe that I'm correct in providing that opinion. The issue of speculation has already been covered, but again, in my experience, and to partly answer your question, I was chairperson of the original planning commission, Sycamore Township Planning and Zoning Commission, back in the 90s. And I prepared land use plans and worked with public agencies, dozens of them, maybe hundreds of them even. Is that I very seldom have seen applications that are so vague in the actual, the intended user or the intended configuration of a site. And that's not a criticism of the applicant. Maybe that's all they have to work with, and that's what they've come forward with. But as a deliberating body, again, my experience has been that we usually need to have more details about what's going in there. The person you talked to earlier about the fence, the 6-foot fence, well, you knew it was 6 feet, that's 72 inches. You knew it was 3 feet from the owner's house on the one side, 10 feet on the other. You had a zoning resolution dealing with limits of fences and so on. It's all there. You could do a 2 + 2 = 4. In this instance, that is not possible, at least in my opinion. And the amount of questions that have been made and the answers that have been given, usually, again, in my experience, are not sufficient to permit the application to move forward. I think that at the very least, the applicant should be able to provide more definitive information about the lessor, whether the grant land is gonna be sold or leased, or whatever. All right, I think I'm near the end here. I am. I think I've covered that, and I appreciate your time and patience. And Harry's smiling, so I guess that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there are others who would like to. I was gonna go across the front row. Everybody's had a chance to speak across the front row. Go right ahead.